Air France Flight 447 into the abyss. On the night of May 31, 2009, Air France Flight 447, an Airbus A330-203, departed Rio de Janeiro bound for Paris. The flight carried 228 souls, passengers from diverse nations and a seasoned crew. It was supposed to be a routine journey across the Atlantic, but it turned into one of aviation's most enduring mysteries and tragedies. As the aircraft climbed into the dark sky, the crew received a weather report indicating turbulence ahead over the equatorial Atlantic. Thunderstorms loomed, their powerful clouds towering to heights of over 500 feet. Navigating through the intertropical convergence zone was common for flights on this route, and Captain Marc Dubois, an experienced pilot, handed control to his two co-pilots before taking a scheduled rest break. Shortly after entering the storm system, the airplane's pitot tubes, crucial instruments for measuring airspeed, began to fail due to ice formation. This malfunction triggered a cascade of automated warnings, confusing the crew. With unreliable speed readings, the autopilot disengaged and the junior pilot in control made a critical error, pulling the nose of the aircraft upward. The Airbus A330, designed for efficiency at high altitudes, began to climb sharply, losing speed and entering an aerodynamic stall. For nearly 4 minutes, the massive jet plunged into the ocean at a steep angle. Alarms blared in the cockpit as the co-pilots struggled to understand the situation. Despite repeated stall warnings, the pilots continued to maintain an upward pitch, sealing the aircraft's fate. Meanwhile, passengers in the cabin were likely unaware of the full gravity of the unfolding disaster, the descent occurring in pitch darkness over open water. The impact of the Atlantic was catastrophic. It wasn't until days later that initial debris was located, and it took nearly 2 years for search teams to recover the black boxes from the ocean floor, 300 feet below the surface. The data revealed a chilling combination of equipment failure, poor communication, and insufficient training in manual flying during emergencies. The crash of Air France Flight 447 spurred worldwide changes in aviation. Airlines and manufacturers implemented stricter guidelines for training pilots in high-altitude manual flying and addressing stall scenarios. Pitot tube designs were improved to prevent similar malfunctions. However, for the families of the 228 victims, the loss remains irreplaceable, a tragic reminder of the fragility of human life and the complexities of modern aviation. Air France Flight 447 into the abyss. The journey begins. On the evening of May 31, 2009, Air France Flight 447 prepared to depart from Rio de Janeiro's Galeão International Airport bound for Paris Charles de Gaulle. The Airbus A330-203 was a technological marvel of its time, designed for long-haul flights with advanced automation and crew members, a mix of vacationers, business professionals, and airline staff. The flight was under the command of Captain Marc Dubois, a pilot with over 100 flight hours, accompanied by 2 pilots, David Robert and Pierre-Cedric Bonin. The aircraft departed into the calm evening skies, heading northeast toward the Atlantic. As it cruised toward its final flight path, the mood on board was relaxed. Passengers settled into their seats, watching movies, chatting, or sleeping, unaware of the challenges ahead. Storm and system failure. The flight entered the Intertropical Convergence Zone, ITCZ, a notorious area near the equator where weather conditions are unpredictable and thunderstorms tower to extreme altitudes. The crew received a weather report showing potential turbulence ahead, but this was nothing out of the ordinary for this route. Around 2 a.m., the aircraft began encountering towering storm clouds, some reaching over 500 feet in the air. At this critical juncture, Captain Dubois retired for a scheduled rest, leaving the aircraft in the hands of his co-pilots. As the aircraft approached the storm, it encountered severe icing conditions. The external pitot tubes, small sensors that measure airspeed, became clogged with ice, a problem known but not entirely mitigated at the time. With unreliable airspeed data, the autopilot and auto-thrust systems disengaged, and the aircraft switched to alternated yaw, removing some automated protections. This sudden change thrust the co-pilots into a manual flying scenario at high altitude, a situation they were not fully trained to handle. Human error and the stall. In the cockpit, co-pilot Bonin, the least experienced of the three pilots, took control. Confused by conflicting readings and alarms, he instinctively pulled back on the control stick, causing the aircraft's nose to pitch upward. This led to a dangerous climb that reduced airspeed and brought the plane into an aerodynamic stall. For nearly 4 minutes, the aircraft remained in a stalled condition, losing altitude rapidly. Despite repeated stall warnings from the flight computer, the pilots failed to recognize the problem. The alarms were drowned out by the overwhelming flood of other warnings and alerts, creating chaos in the cockpit. Co-pilot Robert attempted to intervene, but poor communication between the two pilots exacerbated the situation. Meanwhile, Captain Dubois returned to the cockpit, but found himself unable to regain control in the critical seconds that remained. The plane plummeted at a rate of over 1,000 feet per minute, a descent that ended in catastrophic impact with the Atlantic Ocean at 2:14 a.m. Captain Dubois returned to the cockpit and further increased the pain. The aftermath. The disappearance of Flight 447 sent shockwaves through the aviation industry and the world. Initial searches found debris floating in the Atlantic within days, but the main wreckage and flight recorders remained elusive. The aircraft had gone down in one of the most remote and deep parts of the ocean, over 1,300 feet below the surface. It took nearly 2 years of painstaking search efforts to recover the black boxes and piece together the events of that fateful night. The investigation by France's Bureau of Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation Safety revealed a grim narrative, a combination of equipment failure, insufficient training, and human error. The pitot tube icing was a known issue, but pilots were not adequately trained to handle the resulting emergencies at high altitudes. The Airbus A330's design relied heavily on automation, leaving some pilots unprepared for manual control in critical situations. Legacy and lessons learned. The tragedy of Flight 447 prompted significant changes in aviation. Airlines revised training programs to emphasize manual flying skills and high-altitude stall recovery techniques. Airbus and other manufacturers improved pitot tube designs to reduce the risk of icing. The incident also reignited debates about the over-reliance on automation in modern aircraft and the need for pilots to maintain fundamental flying skills. For the families of the 228 victims, the loss was profound. Memorials were erected in their honor, and their stories became a powerful reminder of the human cost of aviation's flaws. The crash of Flight 447 remains one of the most studied incidents in aviation history, a testament to the industry's commitment to learning from tragedy.